They called me useless, right before they threw me out of my own home. No money, no backup. Just one suitcase and a sentence I'll never forget. You'll never survive without us. I believed them until I hit rock bottom and had nothing left to lose. So I worked. Quietly. Relentlessly. And then, one night, everything flipped. I didn't beg. I didn't explain. I erased their entire debt overnight. Now tell me, would you forgive them or walk away forever? The word didn't just land, it echoed. Useless. Her father said it again, slower this time, like he wanted it to stick. Emily stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, keys still in her hand, the silence stretching just long enough to hurt. I've been applying all week, she said, steady but quiet. Her mother didn't even look up. Applying isn't earning. A pause. Then her sister's voice, softer but sharper. Maybe this just isn't your thing. That's when the tension shifted. Not loud, worse, controlled. Emily stepped forward, placing her phone on the table, emails open, proof lined up. I'm trying. Her father scoffed. Trying doesn't pay bills. Another beat. Then what do you want me to do? She asked. No one answered immediately. That was the answer. And then it snapped. We want you to stop being a burden, he said, finally meeting her eyes. The room felt smaller. Emily swallowed, forcing a breath. So that's it? Her mother sighed. You need to figure your life out. Somewhere else. Release came in the quiet that followed, but it wasn't relief. It was final. Emily nodded once, slow, controlled, as if something inside her had just locked into place. She didn't argue, didn't cry. Instead, she picked up her phone. Okay, she said. And in that moment, no one noticed the shift. She stopped trying to be enough for them and started becoming something they would never see coming. So let me ask you something. What would you do if the people who raised you looked you in the eye and decided you were no longer worth keeping? Not because you hurt them. Not because you failed once. But because you didn't become who they expected, fast enough. Would you stay and fight for their approval, or would you walk away with nothing but your pride? Emily didn't answer right away. Not out loud. But as she stood there, fingers tightening around her phone, something shifted beneath the surface. You really think I'm the problem? She asked, her voice quieter now, but sharper. No one rushed to deny it. That silence said more than any accusation ever could. And that's where it gets uncomfortable. Because deep down, you know this isn't just her story. It happens more than people admit. Expectations turn into pressure. Pressure turns into judgment. And suddenly, love starts to sound like a transaction. So again, what would you do? Prove them wrong? Or prove to yourself you never needed them? Emily made a choice in that moment. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just final. And the truth is, that quiet decision would soon cost her everything before it gave her something far more dangerous. Power. And here's the part no one saw coming, because while they were busy deciding Emily's worth, she was quietly rewriting it. Not in front of them. Not for them. Somewhere far from that kitchen, far from those voices that kept measuring her value in dollars and disappointment. At first, nothing looked different. No sudden success. No dramatic comeback. Just long nights, dim screens, and a girl who stopped explaining herself. You're still trying, a voice echoed in her head. This time, she didn't answer. She just worked. Days blurred. Then weeks. Small wins stacked quietly, too small for anyone else to notice, but enough to change the direction of everything. And then one night, something shifted. Not luck. Not coincidence. Preparation meeting the exact moment she had been waiting for. Her phone lit up. A number. Then another. Then a message she read twice. She didn't celebrate. She didn't call anyone. Instead, she opened something else, something she had seen before, but never touched. A debt. Their debt. Full amount due. She stared at it for a long second. No hesitation this time. Just a calm breath and a single decision. Click. Confirmed. By morning, everything they owed was gone. And the most shocking part? They still had no idea who had just changed their lives overnight. And to understand how that moment was even possible, you need to know who Emily really is, because she was never what they said she was. Emily Carter, 27, born and raised in a quiet American suburb where expectations were as structured as the houses on her street. On paper, her life looked ordinary. Decent school. No scandals. No dramatic failures. But reality was messier than that. "I just need more time," she once told her father, standing in the same kitchen years earlier. He didn't argue. He just sighed, the kind of sigh that said he had already given up. Emily wasn't reckless. She wasn't lazy. She just didn't follow a straight line. While others chose stability, she explored design, content, small freelance projects that paid little but taught everything. Each attempt had a reason. Each failure had context. But none of that translated at home. To them, results were the only language that mattered. And Emily didn't speak it fast enough. Her friends saw something different. "You're building something," one of them said once. Emily smiled, but even she wasn't sure what that something was yet. That uncertainty became the tension. Not dramatic, not explosive, just constant. Like a quiet pressure that never left. And here's the twist. The very thing that made her look lost was exactly what gave her an edge later. Because while everyone else followed clear paths, Emily was learning how to create her own. And once you see how she moved through life, her personality starts to explain everything that followed. Emily wasn't loud, but she wasn't weak either. She listened more than she spoke, observed more than she reacted, and when she did decide something, it stayed decided. "I don't want a normal job," she once told her friend, half laughing, half serious. "I want something that feels like mine." That was the difference. While others chased security, Emily chased ownership of her time, her work, her identity. But that kind of thinking comes with a cost. No clear roadmap. No guaranteed results. Just uncertainty, stretched over months, sometimes years. And every time something didn't work out, the doubt grew louder, not just from her family, but inside her own head. Still, she didn't stop. She adjusted. Learned. Tried again. Each small project sharpened her skills, even when it didn't pay much. "Why keep going?" someone once asked her. Emily paused, then answered quietly, "Because I know I'm close. I just don't know to what yet." That was the tension, living in between potential and proof. And here's the twist. What looked like hesitation was actually precision forming in silence. Because while everyone else needed validation to continue, Emily only needed a reason. And that difference between who Emily was and what her family expected slowly shaped the way they treated her. It didn't break overnight. It built quietly over years of small moments that never seemed serious until they were. At first, it sounded harmless. "Why can't you be more like Sarah?" her mother would say, almost casually, while setting the table. Emily would force a smile. "I'm working on my own path." Her father would barely look up. That path doesn't seem to go anywhere. It wasn't one argument. It was a pattern. Conversations that always ended the same way, Emily explaining, them dismissing. Even simple things carried weight. A late bill. A rejected application. A quiet dinner. Each one became proof in their eyes that she was falling behind. "I'm not asking you to understand everything," Emily said once, her voice steady but tight. "Just give me time." Her father leaned back, unimpressed. "Time is exactly what you've already wasted." That was the tension, constant, controlled, impossible to escape. Not loud enough to explode, but strong enough to wear her down. And here's the twist. The more she tried to be heard, the less they listened. Because in their world, effort didn't matter without results. So slowly, almost without realizing it, Emily stopped sharing, stopped explaining, stopped expecting support. And in that silence, something fragile broke, not her confidence, but her connection to them. And at the center of that silence was her father. Not loud, not explosive, just firm in a way that left no room for doubt. He believed in one thing: results. Numbers. Stability. To him, life was simple. You either contributed or you didn't. And Emily, in his eyes, was falling into the second category. Dreams don't pay rent, he said once, folding the newspaper without even looking at her. Emily stood there, holding back a response. I'm not asking you to believe in it, she replied carefully. Just don't shut it down. He finally looked up. Then prove it works. That was always his answer. No comfort. No middle ground. Just proof. At first, Emily tried to meet him there. She showed him small wins, finished projects, client messages, even minor payments. But each time, he found the gap. This isn't consistent. This won't last. What's your real plan? The tension built in those moments, not from shouting, but from precision. He didn't attack. He evaluated. And somehow, that hurt more. And here's the twist. He wasn't trying to break her. He genuinely thought pressure would fix her. Because in his world, struggle created strength. But what he didn't see was this. The more he pushed for certainty, the more he pushed her away from him entirely. And if her father was direct pressure, her mother was something harder to define. Not harsh. Not loud. Just distant in a way that made everything feel colder. She rarely argued. Rarely raised her voice. But her silence carried weight. While her father demanded proof, her mother measured worth in something quieter, approval that was almost never given. You should think more about your future, she said one evening, adjusting plates on the table without meeting Emily's eyes. I am thinking about it, Emily replied. A small pause. Then came the subtle cut. Then why does it never show? That was her pattern. Not confrontation, correction. Always calm, always controlled, but always leaving Emily second-guessing herself. At first, Emily tried to get closer. Helping around the house. Starting conversations. Sharing updates, even when they were small. I got a new client today, she said once, waiting for a reaction. Her mother nodded lightly. That's good. Let's see if it lasts. The tension lived in those moments, not rejection, but absence of warmth. And here's the twist. Her mother didn't think she was being unfair. She believed she was preparing Emily for reality. Because in her mind, softness created weakness. But what she didn't see was this. Every withheld word of support slowly turned into distance Emily would stop trying to cross. And then, there was Sarah, the standard Emily was always measured against. Not intentionally cruel, not openly competitive, but effortlessly everything Emily was not. Sarah had the kind of life that made sense. Stable job. Predictable income. Clear direction. The kind of daughter their parents could explain proudly to anyone who asked. She's doing well, her mother would say, a quiet satisfaction in her voice. At the dinner table, the contrast didn't need to be stated. It showed itself. I just got promoted, Sarah mentioned one night, casually scrolling through her phone. Their father looked up immediately. That's what I'm talking about. Consistency. Emily sat there, silent, her fork barely moving. No one asked her anything. And when they did, it felt different. So, what about you? Sarah asked once, not unkindly, but with a hint of curiosity that cut deeper than judgment. Emily hesitated. I'm working on a few things. Her father exhaled. Still, that was the tension, constant comparison without direct attack. And here's the twist. Sarah never tried to compete. She didn't have to. The system already favored her. Because while Emily was still building something unseen, Sarah was living proof of what their parents believed success should look like. And slowly, without anyone saying it outright, Emily became the exception they stopped trying to understand. And over time, that comparison stopped being occasional, it became the unspoken rule of the house. Emily wasn't just herself anymore. She was not Sarah. It showed up in small ways first. Your sister had this figured out by your age, her father would remark, almost casually. Emily would nod, pretending it didn't land. But it did. Every time. Then it got sharper. Why can't you be more practical like her? Her mother added one afternoon, folding laundry with quiet precision. Emily exhaled slowly. Because I'm not her, she said, trying to stay calm. A pause. Then her father again, firmer this time. Maybe that's the problem. That was the tension, comparison turning into identity. Not what she did, but who she was becoming in their eyes. Even Sarah noticed it once. You know they don't mean it like that, she said quietly when they were alone. Emily looked at her, a faint smile forming. That doesn't change how it feels. For a moment, there was something softer between them. A brief release. But it never lasted long. Because the next dinner, the same pattern returned. Another achievement from Sarah. Another silence from Emily. Another invisible score being kept. And here's the twist. The more they compared her to someone else, the less they saw who she actually was. Because Emily wasn't failing to become Sarah, she was becoming something entirely different. And one day, that difference would be impossible to ignore. And if comparison was the rule, then dinner became the stage where it played out every single night. No arguments at first, just comments, carefully placed, almost routine. Plates clinked. Chairs shifted. Then it would start. So, any real progress today? Her father asked one evening, not looking up from his food. Emily paused, choosing her words. I finished a client draft. They seemed happy. A small nod from her mother, but it didn't last. Drafts don't guarantee income, she replied calmly. A beat. Then Sarah added, almost casually, you should probably think about something more stable. Emily tightened her grip on the fork. I am thinking about it. Her father let out a short laugh. Thinking isn't doing. That was how it built, layer by layer, sentence by sentence. No shouting. No explosion. Just pressure that never stopped. One night, it pushed further. At this point, we're just supporting you, he said flatly. The room went quiet. Emily looked up. I never asked for that. Her mother sighed. But you're still taking it. That was the moment it hit harder than usual, not louder, just sharper. For a second, Emily almost responded. Almost defended herself. But she didn't. She just nodded, slowly, like she had accepted something. And here's the twist. Those dinners weren't breaking her in the way they thought. They were teaching her exactly what she would never tolerate again. And those dinners didn't end when the plates were cleared. The words followed her long after, settling into quiet moments where they hurt even more. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just precise enough to stay. Be realistic for once, her father said as she passed by the living room. No argument, no context, just a statement dropped like fact. Emily slowed for a second, then kept walking. Later, her mother added another, softer but heavier. We're worried about your future. It sounded like care. It felt like doubt. Even small conversations carried weight. A simple question, are you still doing that online work? Somehow turned into judgment before she could answer. I'm building something, Emily replied one night, her voice steady but low. Her father didn't look convinced. You've been saying that for years. That was the tension, words that didn't explode, but accumulated. Each one small on its own. Together, impossible to ignore. For a moment, there were pauses. Occasional silence where no one said anything. That should have felt like relief. It didn't. It felt like distance growing. And then came the line that stayed longer than the rest. If you disappeared tomorrow, her father said without thinking, nothing here would really change. No one reacted. Not immediately. And here's the twist. That sentence didn't break her the way they expected. It erased something deeper, the need to belong there at all. And yet, even after that moment, Emily didn't walk away, not immediately. Something in her still wanted to prove them wrong, not with words, but with results they couldn't ignore. So she adjusted. Quietly. Strategically. She took on more work, even the low-paying ones she used to avoid. Late nights became routine. Screens glowing at 2 a.m., tabs stacked, deadlines overlapping. No announcements this time. No explanations. Just action. I got another client, she said one evening, placing her phone on the table, waiting just a second longer than she should have. Her father glanced briefly. Let's see if it lasts. That was the tension, effort meeting disbelief, over and over again. Still, she pushed harder. Delivered faster. Improved sharper. Small payments turned into slightly bigger ones. Not enough to impress them, but enough to keep her going. For a moment, something shifted. One night, her mother paused before speaking. At least you're doing something, she admitted. It wasn't praise. But it wasn't rejection either. A brief release. Emily held on to it longer than she should have. Then came the twist. Weeks later, a project fell through. Payment delayed. Another client disappeared without explanation. You see, her father said, almost immediately. This is exactly what I meant. No pause. No benefit of doubt. And in that instant, something became clear no matter how much she proved. They had already decided who she was. And once that realization settled in, the setbacks didn't just hurt, they started stacking. Not all at once, but close enough to feel relentless. One client delayed payment, then stopped replying entirely. Another project was suddenly canceled after weeks of revisions. Emily refreshed her inbox again and again, each time hoping for a different outcome. Nothing changed. It's just bad timing, she whispered to herself, more like a reminder than a belief. But the pattern continued. Applications went unanswered. Proposals ignored. Even the small wins she used to rely on began slipping through her fingers. At dinner, the shift was immediate. Still nothing stable? Her father asked, not even waiting for context. Emily hesitated. It's temporary. He nodded once. It always is. That was the tension, failure outside, doubt inside, pressure everywhere. For a brief moment, she almost broke. Sitting alone in her room, screen dim, eyes tired, she stared at the numbers in her account. Lower than before. Lower than safe. She closed her laptop. Silence. Release should have come there, but it didn't. Because the next day, it got worse. A final email. Short. Cold. A major client pulling out. No explanation. No second chance. And that was the breaking point. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just final. And here's the twist, it wasn't failure that pushed her to the edge. It was realizing she had nothing left to fall back on except herself. And with nothing left to fall back on, the pressure that had been building for years finally found its way out, fast, sharp, and impossible to contain. It didn't start as a fight. Just another evening, another quiet tension sitting at the table. But this time, something was different. Emily didn't look down. She didn't stay silent. I lost a client, she said first, placing her phone on the table. No excuses. No softening. Just truth. Her father leaned back slowly. Of course you did. That was the spark. Emily's joy tightened. You don't even know what happened. I don't need to, he replied, voice steady. The result is the same. Something snapped. Not loudly, but completely. So that's it? No matter what I do, you've already decided I'll fail. Her mother stepped in, tone controlled. We're just being realistic. Realistic? Emily laughed, but there was no humor in it. You call this support? The room shifted. Chairs scraped. Silence stretched, then broke again. You've had enough time, her father said, firmer now. Years. I've been building something. Building what? He cut in. Show me something that actually matters. That was the peak, voices rising, control slipping. Emily stepped closer, eyes steady. You never wanted to see it. A pause. Heavy. Final. And then came the line that changed everything. Maybe because there's nothing there to see. Silence. And in that silence, something inside Emily didn't just break. It shut down. And once that silence settled, it didn't fade, it hardened. The kind of silence that doesn't calm things down, but locks decisions into place. Emily stood there, still, waiting for something to shift. It didn't. Her father leaned forward slightly, fingers pressed against the table. This isn't working anymore. His tone wasn't loud. That made it worse. Emily blinked. What does that mean? A brief glance passed between her parents. Then her mother spoke, carefully measured. It means you need to figure things out on your own. The words hung there, incomplete, but clear. Emily's chest tightened. You're asking me to leave? Her father didn't hesitate this time. No. I'm telling you. That was the moment. No build-up left. No space to negotiate. Just a line, drawn clean and final. For a second, something flared inside her, anger, disbelief, something raw enough to explode. After everything, this is how you handle it? No answer. Just that same stillness. Release came suddenly, but not the way anyone expected. Emily exhaled, long and controlled. The anger didn't vanish. It shifted. Sharpened. Okay, she said. One word. Calm. Too calm. And here's the twist. They thought they had just removed the problem. What they actually did was remove the last thing holding her back. And once the decision was spoken out loud, everything moved faster than it should have, like the house itself was pushing her out. No more discussions. No second chances. Just action. Emily walked to her room without another word. The hallway felt longer than usual, each step heavier, but steady. She didn't slam the door. Didn't rush. Just stood there for a second, looking around at everything that once felt permanent. Then she started packing. Not everything. Just what mattered. A few clothes. Her laptop. The charger she always kept close. Small, precise choices, like she already knew this wasn't temporary. Downstairs, voices continued, lower now, almost normal. That was the part that hit differently. No one came up. No one stopped her. When she finally pulled the suitcase into the hallway, her mother glanced over briefly. Take what you need, she said, as if Emily was leaving for a trip. Emily nodded once. I will. Her father didn't look up this time. That was the final confirmation. She reached for the door, fingers brushing against the handle, pausing just long enough to feel it. Not hesitation, just awareness. Then she opened it. Cold air rushed in. Silence followed. Step by step, she walked out, the sound of wheels rolling behind her louder than anything said that night. And here's the twist, no one called her name. No one asked her to stay. And in that moment, something inside her didn't break, it burned clean. And the moment the door closed behind her, reality didn't wait. It hit immediately, sharp and unforgiving. No transition, no adjustment period. Just a new life, starting from zero. The room she found was small. Barely enough space for a bed, a desk, and her suitcase pushed against the wall. The air felt different, quieter, but heavier. No voices. No expectations. Just silence that she had to fill on her own. At first, it almost felt like relief. No more judgment. No more comparisons. But relief doesn't pay rent. Bills came fast. Deposit. Groceries. Internet. Numbers she used to ignore now demanded attention. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her account balance, calculating again and again. It didn't stretch far enough. "I'll figure it out," she whispered, more forceful this time. Days turned into a routine of survival. Cheap meals. Long hours. Constant refresh on job boards and emails. Every notification made her heart jump, then drop just as quickly. Sleep became optional. Stress didn't. One night, the pressure peaked. Laptop open, unpaid invoices on screen, deadline approaching, and no response from a client who owed her money. Emily leaned back, eyes closing for a second too long. For a moment, everything felt too much. That should have been the breaking point. But here's the twist: with nothing left to lose, fear started to fade. And in its place, something colder, sharper, began to take over. And as that cold determination settled in, it didn't erase the pain, it just made it harder to ignore. Because when everything finally went quiet, there was no one left to distract her from what she had lost. The room stayed still at night. Too still. No background noise. No footsteps. No voices drifting from another room. Just the faint hum of her laptop and the sound of her own breathing. That was when it hit the hardest. Not the money. Not the stress. The absence. Emily sat on the floor one night, back against the bed, phone in her hand. She scrolled through old messages, family chats, short replies, conversations that now felt like they belonged to someone else's life. "They didn't even try to stop me," she whispered, the words barely audible. That thought lingered longer than anything else. Not anger. Not yet. Just a quiet, aching question she couldn't shake. For a moment, the wall cracked. Her eyes closed, her grip loosened, and the weight of everything pressed in at once. This should have broken her. But it didn't stay that way. Because slowly, something shifted again. The sadness didn't disappear, it hardened. And here's the twist: the pain she felt wasn't just from being left behind. It came from finally understanding. She had been alone long before she ever walked out that door. And once that truth settled in, something inside Emily stopped waiting, stopped hoping things would somehow fix themselves. There was no one coming to help. No call. No apology. Just her, and whatever she chose to do next. She sat there for a long time, phone still in her hand, until the screen went dark. Then she set it aside, slowly, like closing a chapter she wouldn't reopen. "Okay," she said out loud, the words steady, grounded. Not to convince anyone else. Just herself. The next morning didn't feel different, but her actions were. No hesitation. No drifting between options. She opened her laptop and made a list. Skills to improve. Platforms to target. Clients to reach. Every step had a purpose now. Tension didn't disappear. It sharpened. Hours stretched longer. Breaks became shorter. Rejections still came, but they didn't hit the same. Each no turned into adjustment, not doubt. One afternoon, a client pushed back hard on her work. "This isn't what I asked for." Emily didn't retreat. "Then let's fix it," she replied, already opening the file again. That was new. That was different. And here's the twist: she wasn't trying to prove anything to her family anymore. That part was gone. What replaced it was something far more dangerous. She was building a life where their opinion no longer mattered at all. And once that shift became real, Emily stopped treating her situation like survival and started treating it like strategy. If she was going to build something, it had to be stronger than anything she had tried before. She didn't wait for perfect conditions. She started with what she had. Tutorials played late into the night, voices from strangers teaching her skills no one around her had ever valued. Design sharpened. Writing improved. Marketing strategies began to make sense. At first, it was overwhelming. Too many tools. Too many directions. Pick one, she muttered to herself, forcing focus where confusion used to live. Tension built quickly. Mistakes still happened. Files corrupted. Deadlines missed by minutes. Feedback came back blunt. This isn't professional. She didn't argue. She adjusted. Hours turned into systems. Notes became checklists. Every failure mapped into something she could fix. Slowly, the chaos started organizing itself. One night, something clicked. Not dramatic. Just clear. A workflow that finally worked. Faster output. Better results. She paused, staring at the screen. This is different. Release came quietly, but it stayed. And then came the twist. The skills she once learned just to survive began to give her leverage. Clients responded faster. Payments became more consistent. Not stable yet, but no longer random. And for the first time, the work in front of her didn't feel like chasing something, it felt like building something others were starting to notice. And as those skills started to take shape, freelance work stopped feeling like random gigs and began to look like a system she could control. Not perfect, not stable, but no longer chaotic. Emily built her profiles carefully, rewriting descriptions, refining portfolios, adjusting prices based on what actually worked. Every detail mattered now. Every message she sent had intent. At first, responses were slow. Some clients ignored her. Others negotiated aggressively. "Can you lower your rate?" one asked. Emily paused, then typed back, "I can adjust the scope, not the value." That shift mattered. Tension still lived in the process. Tight deadlines. Last-minute revisions. Clients disappearing mid-project. Each situation tested her limits. But she adapted. Faster replies. Clearer boundaries. Better delivery. One night, 3 projects overlapped. Screens filled with edits, messages, timers counting down. For a moment, it felt like too much. Then something clicked again. She didn't panic. She prioritized. Finished one. Moved to the next. Closed each task with precision. Release came in the quiet after, notifications turning from stress into confirmation. Payments received. Feedback improving. And then came the twist. Freelance wasn't just keeping her afloat anymore. It was scaling. More clients. Higher rates. Repeat work. Not luck, pattern. And for the first time, Emily wasn't chasing opportunities, they were starting to find her. And just when it started to feel stable, reality reminded her how fragile it still was. Growth didn't remove failure, it just raised the stakes. A major client project collapsed without warning. Weeks of work, gone in a single message. "We've decided to move in a different direction." No explanation. No payment. Emily stared at the screen, reading it twice, then a third time. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to respond, then stopped. That was the tension. Not the loss itself, but how easily everything could still disappear. For a moment, the old feeling crept back in. Doubt. That quiet voice, maybe they were right. She leaned back, closing her eyes. Silence filled the room again, heavier than before. This could have been the point where she spiraled. Instead, she opened the file again. "Fix it," she muttered. Not to the client, to herself. She reviewed every detail. What went wrong? What she missed? Where the gap was? No excuses. Just clarity. Hours passed. Notes turned into adjustments. Adjustments into a better version. The next morning, she sent out 3 new proposals. Cleaner. Sharper. Stronger. That was the release, action replacing hesitation. And then came the twist. 2 rejections came back first. Fast. Cold. But the third. Let's move forward. Short. Simple. Paid. And in that moment, something shifted again. Failure wasn't stopping her anymore. It was training her to recover faster than she could fall. And from that moment on, the shift wasn't dramatic, but it was undeniable. Success didn't arrive all at once. It showed up in small, quiet signals that only she could fully recognize. The first was consistency. Payments started landing on time. Not huge amounts, but enough to stabilize her weeks instead of scrambling through them. Emily refreshed her account one morning, paused, then checked again, just to be sure. "This is real," she whispered. Tension still lingered. One late payment could still disrupt everything. One mistake could undo progress. But the pattern was changing. Clients began returning. "Can you take on another project?" One message read. Another followed the same day. Then a third. That hadn't happened before. She adjusted her schedule, structured her hours, turned chaos into rhythm. Work blocks. Delivery windows. Clear communication. Everything started flowing with intention. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to breathe. Sitting back in her chair, she stared at the screen, not overwhelmed this time, just focused. Release didn't feel like relief. It felt like control. And then came the twist. It wasn't the money that proved she was moving forward. It was the shift in how people spoke to her. Less doubt. More respect. Clearer expectations. "Looking forward to working with you again." Simple words, but they carried weight. And in that moment, Emily realized she wasn't trying to survive anymore. She was starting to be trusted. And with that trust came something heavier: expectation. Not from her family this time, but from the people who were now paying her, relying on her, watching what she delivered next. Deadlines tightened. Messages came faster. "Can you revise this by tonight? We need this earlier than planned." The tone wasn't dismissive anymore, but it was demanding. Emily didn't hesitate. "I'll get it done," she replied, already adjusting her schedule. That was the tension, success bringing pressure, not relief. Her days stretched longer again. Mornings blurred into nights, meals skipped, sleep reduced to hours that never felt enough. The difference was, this time, she chose it. One evening, her screen filled with overlapping tasks. Edits pending. Feedback waiting. Timers counting down. For a second, her hands froze above the keyboard. Too much. Too fast. She closed her eyes, inhaled slowly, then opened them again. "Focus," she whispered. One task. Then the next. No panic. Just movement. Release came in fragments. A file sent. A message delivered. Another project marked complete. But it didn't last long. Another notification. Another demand. And then came the twist. This pressure didn't feel like what she had before. It didn't break her down. It sharpened her. Because every time she pushed through it, something inside her grew stronger, more precise, more controlled. And for the first time, Emily understood something clearly. She wasn't just enduring pressure anymore. She was using it to build a version of herself no one could dismiss again. And just as she learned to handle that pressure, something unexpected appeared, quiet at first, almost easy to overlook. It came through a message. Not urgent. Not dramatic. Just a name she didn't recognize and a line that made her pause. "We've been reviewing your work. Are you available for a larger project?" Emily read it once. Then again. Larger? How large? She clicked into the details, scrolling slowly, her focus sharpening with every line. The scope was different. Longer timeline. Higher expectations. A budget that made her stop completely. "This isn't small," she whispered. That was the tension, opportunity, and risk arriving at the same time. Bigger project meant bigger exposure, but also bigger failure if she missed. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. For a second, the old hesitation flickered. Then she remembered everything behind her. "I'm available," she typed, steady, direct. Send. The wait that followed felt longer than it should have. Minutes stretched. Her screen stayed still. No reply. Release didn't come immediately. Then, notification. "Great. Let's move forward." Short. Confirmed. Real. And then came the twist. This wasn't just another client. This project had visibility, scale, impact beyond a single payment. And in that moment, Emily understood this wasn't just work anymore. It was the door she had been unknowingly preparing for all along. And once that door opened, Emily didn't hesitate. She stepped through it with everything she had. No second-guessing, no holding back. This wasn't just another project. This was the one that could change everything. She restructured her entire routine overnight. Sleep shortened. Distractions cut off. Every hour redirected toward one goal, delivery without compromise. "This has to work," she whispered, eyes locked on the screen. The workload was heavier than anything before. Layers of revisions. Complex requirements. Feedback that came fast and expected faster responses. "We need this adjusted. This section isn't strong enough. No room for error." That was the tension, performance under pressure, with no safety net. For a moment, exhaustion hit hard. Late one night, her vision blurred, fingers slowing, thoughts slipping. She leaned back, breathing uneven. Too much. Too fast. She closed her eyes, just for a second. Then opened them again. "Not now," she said firmly. Back to work. Release came in small victories. One section approved. Then another. A message. "This is exactly what we're looking for." Not enough to relax, but enough to push forward. And then came the twist. Somewhere in the middle of all that pressure, she stopped feeling overwhelmed. She started feeling in control. Because this time, she wasn't trying to prove she could handle it, she already knew she could. And when that sense of control settled in, the result didn't come with noise. It arrived quietly, almost understated, but impossible to ignore. The final file was sent late at night. No hesitation. No second guessing. Just one last review, one steady breath, and click. Delivered. Then came the wait. Minutes passed. Then hours. Her screen stayed still, the silence stretching longer than expected. Tension returned, but different this time. Not fear of failure, but awareness of what this meant. Then the notification appeared. "We're impressed." Emily read it once. Then again, slower. More lines followed. "This exceeded expectations. We'd like to continue working with you." She didn't react immediately. No smile. No celebration. Just stillness, as the words settled in. That was the release, real, undeniable validation. Not from family. Not from hope. From results. Her account updated minutes later. A number higher than anything she had earned before. Not small. Not uncertain. Solid. And then came the twist. It wasn't the money that hit her the hardest. It was the realization she had just done something no one in that house believed she could. Alone. No support. No approval. Just her. And for the first time, Emily didn't feel like she was catching up anymore. She felt ahead. And while Emily was finally moving forward, something else was quietly falling apart back in the house she had left behind. At first, it didn't look serious. Just small shifts. Bills arriving more frequently. Conversations getting shorter. Tension replacing the usual certainty that once defined that home. Her father noticed it first. A payment delayed. Then another. Numbers that didn't quite add up the way they used to. "It's temporary," he said one evening, more to himself than anyone else. But it wasn't. The situation escalated quickly. Investments that were supposed to be safe turned unstable. Expenses stacked without warning. Credit stretched thinner than expected. Her mother tried to maintain control. "We'll manage," she insisted, organizing paperwork at the table, her movements precise but rushed. Sarah stayed quiet, watching, sensing something was off, but not fully understanding yet. That was the tension, control slipping, but no one willing to admit it. Days turned into weeks, and the pressure built in silence. Calls started coming. Missed first. Then returned. Then avoided again. One night, the truth surfaced. Not gently. Not gradually. "We're in debt," her father said, the words landing heavier than anything he had ever said before. No explanation softened it. No confidence followed. And here's the twist: the same man who once measured everything by stability was now losing it faster than he could fix it. And for the first time, he had no solution. And once that truth was out, another decision followed, quiet, immediate, and unspoken, yet agreed on by all of them. Emily would not know. Not because they forgot her. Because they chose to. At first, it sounded reasonable. "There's no point telling her," her mother said, keeping her voice low, controlled. "She has enough to deal with." Her father didn't argue. "Not this time." "She can't help anyway," he added, the words coming faster than the thought behind them. That was the tension, fear mixed with pride, turning into silence. Sarah hesitated. "Maybe we should at least know," her father cut in. Firm. Final. "We handle this ourselves." And just like that, the decision settled. Calls were taken outside. Papers were moved out of sight. Conversations stopped the moment her name came up. Every detail carefully managed, as if hiding the problem could somehow control it. For a brief moment, it almost worked. The house stayed quiet. No more arguments. No more visible cracks. A false release. Because pressure doesn't disappear when ignored. It builds. And then came the twist: they weren't protecting Emily. They were protecting their image of her. The useless daughter who couldn't contribute. Because if she knew, that narrative would collapse. And, for the first time, they would have to face something far more uncomfortable. They might have been wrong about her all along. And the longer they kept it hidden, the worse it became, because silence didn't stop the problem, it accelerated it. Missed payments turned into warnings. Warnings turned into penalties. Letters arrived thicker, stamped with urgency, each one harder to ignore than the last. Her father opened them alone at first, scanning quickly, folding them away just as fast. "I'll handle it," he repeated, though his voice had lost its certainty. But the numbers didn't lie anymore. Interest piled up. Deadlines closed in. Options narrowed. Her mother started noticing the shift. "How bad is it?" she asked one night, her tone no longer controlled. A pause. "Too long." "We're managing," he answered, but this time, no one believed it. That was the tension, control collapsing in real time, with no way to slow it down. Calls became constant. Not just reminders, demands. One afternoon, the phone rang again. Louder this time, sharper, impossible to ignore. Her father picked up, his expression tightening. "We need more time," he said. The voice on the other end didn't soften. "You've already had it." Silence followed. Heavy. Final. That should have been the breaking point. But it wasn't the worst part. Because then came the twist. This wasn't just debt anymore. It was exposure. If they failed to resolve it, everything they had built, the house, the image, the stability, would start collapsing publicly. And for a family that lived on control, that was something they couldn't afford to lose. And just when everything back home was on the edge of collapse, the truth found its way to the one person they never expected, Emily. Not through a call, not through an apology, but by accident. It started with a message meant for someone else. A notification that flashed briefly across her screen, her father's name, followed by a number that didn't make sense at first. Too large. Too urgent. She hesitated, then opened it. The details unfolded fast. Overdue amounts. Penalties. Final notices. Not one account, multiple. Layered. Compounding. Emily stared at the screen, her mind catching up with what her eyes were already reading. No, this doesn't just happen overnight, she whispered. That was the tension, realization hitting harder than shock. She scrolled further. Dates lined up. Weeks. Months. All the time she had been gone, this had been building. A call log appeared next. Unknown numbers. Repeated attempts. Ignored. For a moment, she leaned back, exhaling slowly. No anger yet. Just clarity settling in. They didn't tell me, not because they couldn't. Because they chose not to. That should have created distance. But it didn't. Because then came the twist. The same people who called her useless were now drowning in a problem she could actually solve. And in that quiet realization, power shifted. Not loudly, not visibly, but completely. And once that shift in power settled, Emily didn't react immediately because this wasn't a moment for emotion, it was a moment for decision. She sat still, eyes fixed on the numbers, replaying everything in her mind. Every word they had said. Every time they dismissed her. Every moment she had been told she wasn't enough. They really thought I couldn't do anything, she murmured. That was the tension, pain colliding with control. For a second, anger surfaced. Sharp. Justified. She could have closed the screen, walked away, let them face everything alone. It would have been fair. Logical. Even deserved. Her hand hovered over the phone. Then she stopped. A breath in. Slow. Measured. This isn't about them, she said quietly. That changed everything. Instead of reacting, she moved with intent. She opened her accounts, reviewed her finances, calculated carefully. Not reckless. Not emotional. Every number had to make sense. This wasn't impulse. This was precision. Minutes passed. Then longer. The weight of the decision didn't disappear, it sharpened. And then came the twist. She didn't choose to help them out of love. She didn't do it for forgiveness. She did it because she could. Because the same person they called useless now had the power to fix what they had broken. And in that quiet, controlled moment, her action wasn't just help. It was proof. And once the decision was made, Emily didn't delay, because hesitation would only weaken what she had already resolved. She opened her banking app, the glow of the screen reflecting in her eyes, steady, focused. Numbers lined up in front of her, no longer overwhelming, just data to be handled. Account balances. Incoming payments. Reserves she had built, piece by piece, without anyone noticing. This is enough, she said quietly. The tension didn't disappear. It sharpened. Every digit carried weight. Every transfer meant something irreversible. Her finger hovered above the screen. One tap could change everything. Not just for them, for her. A breath in. Slow. Controlled. Then she moved. Transfer. Confirm. Another account. Another confirmation. One by one, she cleared them. Overdue balances. Penalties. Final notices. each payment erasing a problem that had been growing for months. Minutes passed, but it felt longer. The screen refreshed. Zero due. Again. Another account. Zero. Release came suddenly, but it wasn't loud. It was quiet, absolute. And then came the twist. By the time the night ended, everything was gone. Not reduced. Not delayed. Gone. Every debt they had been hiding, erased in a single night. No calls. No warnings. No explanation. Just silence on their side. And control on hers. Because in that final moment, the truth became undeniable. The daughter they once called useless had just done something none of them were capable of doing. And when morning came, the silence didn't last, it shattered. It started with a notification. Then another. Her father stared at his phone, frowning, refreshing again, as if the numbers would change back. "That's not possible," he muttered. Her mother stepped closer, grabbing the papers from the table, flipping through them quickly. "Check again," she said, her voice tighter than usual. "I am checking." Zero. Across every account. The tension hit instantly, confusion turning into disbelief. Sarah leaned in, scanning the screen. "Did you pay something?" Her father shook his head, slower this time. "No." A pause. Heavy. Then the realization began to form, not fully, not comfortably, but enough to unsettle everything. "This doesn't just disappear," her mother said quietly. "No," he replied. "It doesn't." That was the moment the room shifted. Control gone. Certainty gone. Replaced by something unfamiliar, doubt. For a second, no one spoke. No one moved. Then Sarah said it, barely above a whisper. "There's only one person who would." Silence snapped tighter. And here's the twist: the name they had spent so long dismissing was now the only explanation left. The daughter they had pushed out was the one who had just saved them. And in that realization, something far more uncomfortable settled in. They hadn't just been wrong. They had been completely blind. And once the realization settled, silence didn't hold. It broke into confrontation. Not loud at first, but sharp enough to cut through everything they had avoided saying. "We need to call her," Sarah said, her voice steady but urgent. Her father didn't respond immediately. He stood there, staring at the phone, jaw tight. "And say what?" "That we were wrong," she replied, faster this time. That word hung in the air, wrong. Tension spiked instantly. Her mother stepped in, tone controlled but strained. "We don't even know for sure it was her." Sarah didn't back down. "Then who else could it be?" Silence again. No answer came. That was the breaking point. Her father exhaled sharply. "Even if it was her, this doesn't change everything." Sarah turned to him, disbelief clear. "It changes everything." He shook his head. "No. It doesn't erase the fact that she what?" Sarah cut in, louder now. "That she struggled? That she didn't fit your plan?" The room shifted again, tension rising faster, heavier. For a moment, no one spoke. Then her mother said quietly, "We were trying to help her." Sarah laughed once, short, bitter. "By throwing her out?" That landed hard. And then came the twist. For the first time, no one defended it. No explanation. No justification. Just silence, thick, undeniable. Because in that moment, the truth wasn't just uncomfortable, it was humiliating. The daughter they had judged, dismissed, and pushed away had just proven their entire version of her wrong without saying a single word. And when the silence stretched to its limit, it didn't break with shouting, it broke with a voice they hadn't heard in that house for a long time. Emily stood at the doorway. No announcement. No hesitation. Just presence. Her father turned first, eyes widening slightly, as if he wasn't sure this was real. Emily, she didn't step forward. Didn't soften. Her gaze moved across the room, taking everything in, the tension, the guilt, the truth they were finally facing. "I heard everything," she said calmly. That was the tension control shifting again, but this time in front of them. Her mother tried to speak. "We didn't." Emily raised her hand, just enough to stop it. Not aggressive, just final. A pause. Heavy. Then she looked directly at her father. No anger. No shaking. Just clarity. "I thought I was useless, right?" The words landed clean. Precise. No one answered. That was the release, because nothing they could say would fix it. And then came the twist. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse. She didn't need to. Because standing there, after everything, was already the answer. The daughter they had dismissed was now the one they couldn't even look at properly. And in that moment, the power wasn't just reversed, it was undeniable. And after that moment, nothing needed to be said again, because everything had already been made clear. Emily held her father's gaze for a second longer, not to challenge him, not to win, but to let the truth settle where words no longer mattered. Then she looked away first. Not defeated. Done. Her mother took a step forward. "Emily, wait." But Emily shook her head slightly. No anger. No hesitation. Just a quiet boundary being drawn. "I didn't come back to stay," she said, her voice calm, almost distant. That was the tension, expectation rising, hope forming too late. Her father shifted, as if searching for something to say, something to fix what had already happened. Nothing came. For a brief moment, the room felt fragile again. Like it could still change. It didn't. Emily turned toward the door, the same one she had walked through before, but this time, her steps were lighter, steadier. No suitcase. No uncertainty. Release came in that movement, silent, controlled, final. "Emily," her mother called again, softer now. Emily paused, just enough to acknowledge it. Then continued walking. And here's the twist, this time, she wasn't being pushed out. She was choosing to leave. Because the person who had once needed their approval didn't need anything from them anymore. And in that final step, the distance between them wasn't created by rejection, it was created by clarity. And as the door closed behind her once again, the silence she left behind felt heavier than anything that had been said. No one moved at first. No one spoke. Her mother stood frozen, eyes still fixed on the empty doorway. "She really left," she whispered, as if saying it might change it. But it didn't. Her father remained where he was, shoulders tense, gaze lowered, not out of authority this time, but something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. That was the tension, control replaced by realization. Sarah exhaled slowly, shaking her head. "We pushed her there," she said, not accusing, just stating what was already obvious. No one argued. For a brief moment, the truth settled in fully. Every word they had said. Every time they had dismissed her. Every moment they chose judgment over understanding. Release came quietly, but it wasn't relief. It was regret. Her mother sat down, hands trembling slightly. "She didn't need us." Her father closed his eyes for a second too long. And then came the twist. It wasn't just that Emily had succeeded without them. It was that she had succeeded despite them. And in that realization, something far more painful surfaced. They hadn't lost her when she walked out the first time. They lost her long before that. They just didn't notice until it was too late. And as that realization settled, something deeper began to take shape, not in that house, but in the space Emily had chosen for herself. Because what she walked away with wasn't just distance, it was clarity. For so long, her value had been measured by others. Compared. Questioned. Reduced to what she hadn't achieved yet. Every word she heard had slowly rewritten how she saw herself. But not anymore. Because this time, the proof didn't come from approval. It came from action, from choices made when no one was watching, from results built in silence. That was the tension between who she was told to be and who she had become. And finally, it resolved. Not with anger, not with revenge, with understanding. Emily didn't need them to admit they were wrong. She didn't need apologies to validate what she had done. That part was already complete. And here's the twist, her worth had never changed. Only their ability to see it had. Because the girl they once called useless had always been capable. She just needed to step outside the place that refused to recognize it. And in that final shift, the story wasn't about proving anyone wrong anymore. It was about no longer needing to. Because real value doesn't come from being accepted, it comes from knowing exactly who you are, even when no one else does. And after everything you've just witnessed, maybe the question isn't about Emily anymore, it's about you. Because stories like this don't just exist on screen, they echo in real lives, in quiet moments, in words that were once said and never forgotten. Maybe you've been there, sitting at a table where your voice didn't matter, hearing judgments that slowly shaped how you saw yourself, trying to prove something to people who had already decided who you were. That's the tension between wanting to be seen and being constantly overlooked. And maybe, just maybe, a part of you is still waiting for that moment where everything finally shifts. But here's the release. What if that moment doesn't come from them? What if it comes from you? Because the truth is, not everyone gets an apology. Not everyone gets recognition. Not everyone gets that perfect ending where everything is fixed. And that's the twist sometimes. The real victory isn't making them understand. It's reaching a point where you no longer need them to. So tell me, if you were in Emily's place, would you have done the same? Would you help them, or walk away for good? Drop your answer below. I'm reading every single one. And if that question still lingers in your mind, then let's take it one step further, because this isn't just a story. It's a choice that reveals who you really are under pressure. Imagine standing exactly where Emily stood. Not in theory, not from a distance, but in that exact moment, hurt, dismissed, then suddenly holding all the power. That's the tension, pain meeting opportunity. Would you use that power to prove a point, or to walk away and protect yourself? Because helping them doesn't erase what they did, but leaving them doesn't erase who you've become either. So, what matters more to you? Justice or peace? Think about that carefully. Because here's the twist, there is no perfect answer. Some people will say helping is strength. Others will say walking away is self-respect. And both can be right. But your answer? That reflects your story, your scars, your limits. So don't just scroll past this. Tell me honestly. If you had the chance to become everything they said you couldn't be, would you go back and show them? Or would you let silence be your final answer? Drop your choice below. I want to see how many of you choose justice, and how many choose freedom. And if you've made it this far, then this story isn't just something you watched, it's something you felt. Because moments like these don't leave quietly. They stay with you, asking one more question you can't ignore. What would you do if you were given the same chance? That's the tension. Your answer isn't just a comment. It's a reflection. Maybe you've been underestimated. Maybe someone once made you feel small, like your efforts didn't matter. And maybe, just like Emily, you're still carrying that moment somewhere inside. So here's your release. You don't have to keep it there. Say it. Write it. Let it out. Because your story matters just as much. And here's the twist. The moment you share your answer, you're not just reacting to Emily's story anymore. You're reclaiming your own. So don't scroll past this. Don't stay silent like before. Tell me, what would your final move be? Help them? Or walk away forever? Type it below. No filters. No perfect answers. Just the truth. Because sometimes, the most powerful ending is the one you choose to speak out loud.